This is Career Competitor, and it is the podcast that believes we all have a competitive self that drives our optimal performance in our careers and within our lives. My name is Steve Meller, and in the past 15 years, having been a coach to high performers, Olympians, business owners, executives across all walks of life, I have come to find that competitiveness comes from within. And I'm going to be using this podcast to really showcase how competitors from all walks of life are finding optimal performance and have built the careers that they have today. On this episode of Career Competitor, really excited to be welcoming back Mike Brcic to the show. Mike is the founder of Wayfinders. I'm going to be giving Mike and Wayfinders the introduction that they certainly deserve here in just a moment. But some really key elements that all of you competitors out there need to be paying attention to. The primary theme throughout this episode is that of community. And Mike really introduces this by emphasizing why we need and should be building communities, but how to do so in an effective and impactful way. Secondly, we dive into some keys to facilitating personal growth. And finally, Mike touches on how competitors can all benefit from simply allowing their definition for success to evolve as both they and their business evolves as well. Anything and everything you need to know about Mike and his company can be found at way-finders.com. There's information in the show notes. Mike's going to be providing you some information at the back end of the interview as well. But for now, I'm going to get out the way and bring on our guest, Mike Brcic, returning to this episode of Career Competitor. Hey, before we carry on with this episode, let me bring your attention to a link that you'll find right there in the show notes so that you can subscribe to my monthly email. It's just going to give you some awesome insights on who it is I am, what it is I've got going on, and maybe there'll be one or two food for thoughts in there that can stimulate your process, get you to get a little unstuck, get you to take a little bit more action, and maybe get you a little closer to optimal performance as you start to shape a stronger version of your optimal self. Go ahead, click that link in the show notes so you can become part of the ever-growing email list that's receiving this awesome insight each and every month, courtesy of me and courtesy of Career Competitor. Now, back to the episode. Okay, our Career Competitor for this episode is a returning guest who last joined us in October of 2020, where we learned all about the emergence of his company, Wayfinders. Since then, Wayfinders has continued to build its tight-knit community for ambitious entrepreneurs on a quest for a rich, fulfilled, and meaningful life that includes but goes well beyond financial success. Last we spoke, our guest was still in the earlier stages of this particular entrepreneurial endeavor, but he was also celebrating 25 years as an entrepreneur. So as he approaches, based on the math, year 28, it's safe to say our guest is no stranger to establishing and growing a successful business, which is why it gives me great pleasure to be welcoming back from Toronto, Canada, Mike Brcic. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. That intro blew my mind a little bit on two levels. One was when you said the last time we chatted was October 2020. I was like, wow, my sense of time, the pandemic just threw my whole sense of time out the window because It feels like we were just chatting yesterday.
Yes.
And the other is 28 years as an entrepreneur, which is quite a wild ride. I think June of 1996 was when I started my first company. So right. I think we're 27 years plus 1 month right now. Wow. And I'm grateful for every bit of it. What a ride.
Yeah, here I am approaching halfway through year 2. It's so naive still. So many lessons and so many traps and pitfalls still to fall into as I go on my business journey. But we were joking before we got started here, man, like folks like yourself and a few other entrepreneurs were really part of my motivation to jump into doing what I'm doing today. Just listening to your stories, seeing so many things that I had in common with folks like yourself. Obviously, very different worlds, operating with very different people and expertise, whatever it is. But at the same time, learning from folks like yourself. And that's where this show has actually gone in the last couple of years too, is more and more listeners are people that are either they have an appetite or a curiosity towards going into business, or much like the folks that you're working with Wayfinders, they're looking for more. They're looking for something that can really take them beyond whatever it is that's maybe forcing them to plateau, forcing them to be disinterested, whatever it might be. And I want to start right there, man. I want to start with Wayfinders and ask the very broad, general question of just like, how are things going? Like, how have things been going in the last 3 years since we last spoke?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it really couldn't be better. Things are going amazingly. We're here beginning of July or middle of July 2023 as we're recording this, and my events are sold out until the end of 2024 right now. And so, just a couple of weeks ago, filled up the last of my 2024 spots, and so I'm deeply grateful for that. I think that's testament to the focus I put on delivering amazing value to my customers and delivering an amazing product or service, because that hasn't really come through really anything that you would call marketing. It's really just returning clients and referrals. And so I'm grateful for that. And it opens up so much. I also hired a full-time assistant who's kind of taken a lot of the admin and day-to-day. And so it allows me a huge canvas to paint with. And right now I'm in this spot, we're heading on family vacation in a few days. And it gives me a lot of room to just dream and design and figure out, what's next, and the bandwidth to be able to pull it off. And so I'm deeply grateful for that. And the community is amazing. We have, I'm hosting a community picnic tonight here in Toronto. About half of our community is based in the Toronto area, and the other half, mostly North America, but also a few people in Europe as well. And it's just, for me, as of late, the focus has been on community building and really understanding what makes a strong and a deep community, and what is it that people need. So, every week I'm talking to at least 5 or 6 of my members and just kind of getting to know them as people, getting to know, what are they dreaming about? What are they anxious about? And how can the community, provide them with support and value and accountability and all those kind of things. So it's a beautiful place to be in right now. And I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to go back to the community stuff, because for me, I think it's so powerful, and it's something that I'm already learning from the work that I do while I work with most people one-on-one. There is an opportunity for all of those individuals to actually be connected if and when it makes sense. And then there's a huge power that can be created. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too quickly, because there's some really good stuff there, and I'm excited to discuss that with you. But one thing I would love to come back to is really how the business has grown, because last we spoke, it was very much about facilitating these experiences, and you didn't talk too much about the stuff that would go on between the experiences, and as you just alluded to there with the community. And I know now there's coaching offerings, and there's all these ways for you to have greater touch, greater contact with all of these people within the communities. Talk to me a little bit about maybe where that first came from, like how that whole part of the company really originated and where it's gotten you to now today.
Yeah, great question. If I rewind maybe 3-4 years, before the pandemic, and I think my last event before the pandemic was November 2019 in Bhutan, and it was up until that point the best event I had ever done, and it was this beautiful community of people that came together. But we came together for 10 days, and then kind of everybody kind of scattered, and then for the people, there's probably about a third to half of those people were in Toronto, and we had a reunion dinner and a couple little get-togethers here and there, but very, very ad hoc. And it made me think that I want this sense of community and belonging and camaraderie and fun and joy to continue beyond the event, and also preceding the next event. And then of course the pandemic hit, and so I shifted to trying to create some sense of community online, and then things started up again. And my first post-pandemic event, or during the pandemic event, was September of 2021 in Greenland. And then because I'd had all these events postponed, and then I had the events that were already on the calendar, I had to deliver 5 events in 13 months. And each of these events is a big undertaking, right. and it was still on my mind, this idea of like creating an enduring community, and I just had no bandwidth to pull any of it off because I was just so focused on delivering these events. And in between that, I also had to squeeze in some scouting for 2023 events and 2024 events. So it was a crazy time, but fun as well, traveling all over the world. And so last November 2022, finished my event in Morocco, and that was kind of the last of that string of pandemics, time squished events. And I had 6 months grace, 6 months rest before my event in Uganda, which happened last month. And so then I started thinking about, okay, let's build this community, and what does it look like, and what are we doing? And then I also realized if I'm going to do that, I need some help. And I'd had this sort of bias that I wanted to run a company with no staff, because my previous company, I had a lot of staff, a lot of complexity, and I didn't want that again. And so I'd set up my business to be very simple to run, to be very profitable, with just me as an employee. But I realized if I wanted to build out this community, I needed some help. So I worked on hiring a full-time assistant, which has been amazing, and I would recommend that to anybody. It's really freed up a lot of my time to just work in my zone of genius, which is designing experiences and events. But in terms of the community, like I said, the community is kind of the people who've been on my events, who are going on my events. It's kind of about a 50-50 mix of people here in and around the Toronto area, and then people farther afield. And so, I designed this kind of year-long container where there's online stuff, get-togethers, workshops, all that kind of stuff. But there's also in-person gathering, and I wanted to make sure that there was lots of, physical in each other's faces, spending time together in person, because people were really starving for that. And so I basically put together a bit of an offering to people. I put it out to the network of entrepreneurs that I know. And so, the people that were coming on my Uganda event, my Mongolia events in 2023, they were already part of this, but then I opened the tent wider, people who weren't necessarily going on one of my ventures. And I think I signed up about another 35 people to the community, which was great. And it gave us the critical mass we need, to get participation at events. So I think there's about 100 people in the community now, all entrepreneurs. And we have regular, yesterday we had an incredible online workshop on hiring remote workers, so you can work in your zone of genius, unique ability. Today we have this community picnic, and there's all kinds of ad hoc stuff that happens in the community, and it's just this beautiful ongoing container. And one of the biggest things I'm trying to encourage within the community is this idea of asking for help, because we've become so addicted to this cult of individuality of going it alone, and the lone hero or heroine against the elements, against all odds. And that's wonderful and it's appealing, but that's not really grounded in history or evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, we have relied on each other, and we've needed each other, and our brains are wired to rely on each other and connect with each other. And so I'm trying to bring that back. And I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday or the other day about, he just feels kind of icky when he's asking for help. He feels like he's burdening other people. And I tried to shift his thinking around that and say, listen, people love to give. They love to help each other. It actually feels good. And when you ask somebody else for help, you're actually giving them a gift. You're giving them a gift of, here's an opportunity to help. And of course, you can take that too far, and you can be a burden, and you're constantly, you have to balance that with giving in return. But with the community, I really want to shift that. And for me, the value of a community is in being able to count on each other. And one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Charles Eisenstein, has this wonderful story he told recently about his Amish friend, and his house burned down. And typically, Amish people do not have home insurance. Their home insurance, where you pay a monthly premium and all that kind of stuff. Their home insurance is when your house burns down, the community will build you a new house. Sure. And the premium that you pay on that insurance is all the times that you helped out your neighbor, and that you built their porch, or you helped till their field or whatever. Right. And that to me is a beautiful way of being, of like really, taking taking things out of the financial transaction world and bringing them back to the world of relationships. And of course, it's beautiful. We have all this convenience and I can order something to my front door and that's great. But I also want to be able to rely on my neighbors, rely on my friends. I want them to be able to rely on me and bring things back into this web of relationships. And that's what I'm trying to do with the community, which is a beautiful experiment.
Yeah. And I know any words that you use are always deliberate, and this word container is something that is just jumping out to me immediately. Like I hear this word, it's clearly a deliberate word in the sense of just, and again, I'm just going to take a stab at it myself in terms of how I'm personally, relating to it, and this notion of being able to just bring people into something and almost, respectfully put that lid on it and say, like, listen, guys, from a safety standpoint, because we actually spoke about psychological safety last we spoke. From a safety standpoint, what happens in here stays in here. Like we are here for one another. We are operating for one another. We are giving to one another. We are supportive of one another. There's this, I get this sense of like just amazing respect for the space that's being shared by using this word container. Would I be right sort of interpreting it that way?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's another experiment in progress. For a community to function and be strong, there has to be a clear understanding of who is in the community and who isn't. And if there isn't a clear boundary, then your container is everybody, and that's not really a community. That's just
right.
The earth or your city or whatever. And so people need to know who is this community for. But it's also a bit of an experiment. Like our picnic tonight, people are invited to bring their partners, or invited to bring their kids, or even bring a friend. But we also have some events that are exclusively just for members. But members' families and their kids and their partners, they're a big part of their lives, right? And so I wanted to bring that into the fold as well. But the other part of what I think is important for the communities is our guiding principles. And so we have this set of 6 guiding principles that hopefully, if we do a good job of communicating them, of living them, of modeling them, they become the operating manual for how we operate together. And so I can give you a couple of examples. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they define how does our particular community operate. So one of our community guiding principles is embrace the unknown. So basically take risks, do new things, embrace, if we're in a meeting together, take risks and be maybe a little bit more vulnerable than you might be otherwise, and take risks together and support each other and taking those risks. And another one of them is have fun and be a little ridiculous. And sometimes the workshops we do, they might get very intense and personal, and it can be hard work. And this work of like trying to be adults is it's difficult work. But so we have to make sure that we're also making time for having fun and being ourselves and being ridiculous, right? And so we try to permeate that through everything we do. And so if we have our monthly community call, I might show up in that call with just a ridiculous wig on, just to model that guiding principle for the community. And hopefully over time, if we're communicating and modeling, that just permeates the community and people understand, hey, this is us. This is how we do things around here.
Yeah, and it all goes back to one of those consistent messages from the last we spoke, and the consistent messaging when you just simply look at your branding, if you want to make it as surface level as that, it's just this priority of human connection. Everything about what you're doing as a service, as a company, and then in terms of just those guiding principles, it all falls back in some way, shape, or form with human connection and the power of it, and the way it can facilitate an individual's growth. And that's what I love about it, is it all comes back to the individual benefiting. So the individual seeing this reward, this return for this consistent commitment to connecting with another human. And I think that is such a powerful message that we don't hear enough, because as you're talking here, when you think about the great sports teams and when you think about these great movies, it's always about this individual that does this individually great thing. And for whatever reason, great teams are remembered for individuals that did something incredible. And it's like, well, to your point, nothing that individual brings will ever be greater than what the collective group is bringing to the table. And for whatever reason, that consistently gets lost in this heroin ideal that we've created for individuals to get their moment at the peak and get their moment in the limelight, whatever it might be. And I'm curious, when you bring these entrepreneurs together, because we didn't really go into this last time, and I'm now that we're on this, I'd love to go into this a little bit. You've got so many people coming into a space. Let's say when you first arrive at one of these locations that you're at, and in so many ways, all these people are used to being the man, the woman within their organization. They are the top dog, the top whatever within what it is they're doing. How do you first bridge that in terms of finding that true sort of equal ground and start to really stress human connection almost from the jump? Like, how do you get in front of that from the moment you arrive?
Yeah. Well, it actually starts well before the event. And yeah. And so my assistant and we are actually right now designing and mapping out this whole onboarding experience. So from the moment somebody signs up for one of our international events, our adventures, to the moment they arrive in the destination, one of the things that we're working on is this welcome package that we are sending to people, and it's going to have all these interesting, quirky little things in it. Each one of them tied to one of our guiding principles. Again, explaining to people, this is how we do things around here, right? And so, that value or that principle of have fun and be a little ridiculous, there's going to be a wig in there, and there's going to be a postcard with a QR code on it with a link to a custom curated Spotify dance playlist for a dance party. We are going to have, and I don't want to give away too much here, but we're going to have get-togethers before we actually arrive there, and then before everybody who's coming to the event is paired with somebody else who's going there, and then we encourage them to meet up, in person if they can, virtually if not, and get to know each other. And then that's facilitated. There's some questions that we give them, and so we try to take new people and pair them with alumni, so that the alumni can give them, this is what to expect, and this is how we do things around here. So, and they do a pretty good job of explaining to other people. So that and then we have a community call about a month before the event, so everybody gets to know each other, get to know what's going to, how to get there properly, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of points of contact before we actually meet, and then wherever we meet, there's usually a day or two where we'll meet in in Mongolia, for instance. We're meeting in Ulaanbaatar before the event actually starts, and some people arrive 2 days before, some 1 day before, that kind of stuff. Where there's actually a little bit of light facilitation before the event actually starts as well. And so everybody's kind of showing up primed already. They know what the community is about. They know the guiding principles. They know a few other people, and all of that is designed to help people connect on a human to human level rather than CEO to CEO level, whatever. I really try to de-emphasize titles and awards and all that kind of stuff. And so, in Uganda, we had one guy who's, been an entrepreneur for 30 years, won numerous awards, very well known. And then some people who are, there's no newbies there. There's no people in startup mode, but people who are newer on their journey. And if I do my job well as a facilitator, none of that stuff matters. We're not connecting on a level of our identities or our constructed identities. We're connecting on the level of just human beings trying to get through life, and our struggles and our dreams and our frustrations and our challenges and all that kind of stuff. And all of that happens in the weeks and months leading up, and then continues through the event. And if I've done my job well, everybody there feels like they know a few people really, really deeply, and feels like they know everybody there on deeper than a surface level. Yeah. And they also feel like they've been seen, right?
Yes, I love that last part. But the reason why I wanted you to take us there was that I think anybody listening to this, whether you are a one-person company right now, whether you are the leader of many, or whether you're lower down and working your way up through a company, and really understand that wherever you are in your journey, it's okay to expect everything that you just described. And I want to be abundantly clear about that. Like, whether you think you've got it all figured out, or whether you think you're learning everything as you go day in, day out, there's still an ability for us to all just sort of drop the egos and the titles and the responsibilities that we may or may not have created for ourselves at this point of our journey, and just see one another as a human, and see the power in that, and see the ability to learn from one another just by letting all that stuff go by the wayside and focus on human connection. I just think about how I've built what I'm building right now over the last 18 months, and every single person I've sat down with, I have just been truly gracious for the time. And it is purely, if it's someone who's thinking about working with me, if it's someone that I'm trying to learn from, like, everybody is given the same respect and just time and complete undivided attention as the person before and the person that comes after. And the reason is, I just want to know who it is I'm learning from, and who it is I'm allowed to actually potentially provide coaching to, or whatever it might be. There's an opportunity as humans to be always connecting on a deeper level if we can look through these things that referenced by our titles and our achievements and whatnot. And so it's wonderful to hear it, because I used to say this in the sports world: if it's good for the best, then it's good for everybody. And so what you're saying here is that you've got these people that are obviously able to invest a large sum, and they're very successful in their own regards, to come to something like this and say, I'm going to put my ego to one side. I'm going to put all this stuff to one side. And if I'm able to do this, why isn't everybody within my organization? Why isn't everybody who's also doing a similar role in a different organization able to do the same thing? And then, I hear that a lot in what you're telling here. And I'm also curious, like, is it an easy process? Is most of the people that are already signing up for something like this, are they halfway there? Do you get some resistance to this? I'm just curious.
Well, I don't want to sound too cocky about it, but I feel like I've invested enough time in my training and my skills, my experience, everything as a facilitator, to have developed a pretty good comfort level with creating that container it's basically, I'm creating a container of safety where people feel like, hey, I can put this armor aside while I'm here. This feels good to me. This feels safe, and I can just be myself, and I can talk about this thing I'm struggling with, or this thing I'm ashamed of, or whatever. And when you create that, it's like a big giant sigh of relief. Like, oh, I don't have to have my guard up. I can just share whatever. And to me, the true definition of community is a place to which we can bring our full, whole, authentic selves and still feel like we belong. For me, the two biggest ingredients that go into creating that sense of safety are, one, modeling. So for me to model that authenticity, that vulnerability, to bring my full self, and not slip into this facilitator host mode, the big poobah who's got it all figured out. I'm just a human being that's got his own flaws and struggles and all that kind of stuff, and I'm very open about that. The second is storytelling, and storytelling is, to me, the most powerful way to get people to connect on that human level, on that authentic level, and an invitation to storytelling. And so I'll share one thing that I've now done, I think, with my last 3 events, that is quite powerful. And this is one of the first things we do. The first thing we do as a group together when we meet in some faraway land is we have our first dinner in the host city, Ulaanbaatar in the case of Mongolia. It's not, there's not a lot of facilitation or anything like that. We're just having dinner. Then we fly or drive to the actual official start of the destination, and there's always a welcome ceremony. And the point of that welcome ceremony, and it always occurs around a fire, because fires have been associated with ceremony and with storytelling and connection for hundreds of thousands of years. And so that welcome ceremony, that opening ceremony, is just a signal to everybody there, as we have now entered a different world. We're leaving the old world behind, and we're entering this new world together. And that's the important part of it. But then generally the first, and there's, throughout the week, there's all kinds of group exercises and things that we do together. But generally the first exercise we do, so we get together in a circle, and on the packing list that I've sent to people, one of the items is bring a small item with personal meaning or significance to it, something that's meaningful to you. And so with that first exercise, I tell people, bring your item to the circle, and then I invite them to share a story about that item with the group. And I haven't really had anybody, reject that invitation. Everybody accepts the invitation. Mm-hmm. Some people might take it to, a deeper, more vulnerable level, and some people maybe a bit more surface. But it's always, for everybody, it's meaningful. And some of the stories are incredible. They might share a picture of their, spouse that passed away, or they might share a picture of their kids and share why they're so proud of their kids and how they like. And there's always laughter, and there's always lots of tears and everything. But it's like this first moment of really connecting on a human level, because no matter what story somebody shares, if it's a story of loss, everybody has experienced loss, right? Mm. There's these core human experiences that touch us on emotional level, and there's only a few of them. And so if I share a story, my father passed away when I was 16. If I share a story about my father and what he meant to me, and when he passed away, that will probably touch something deep in you, of something, it might just be a pet that you lost, but you can experience that moment of loss, and you will have an instant connection with that other person, and you will know something about them that will carry throughout the week.
Absolutely. And I love especially the modeling stuff. Like for me, at the heart of, and I tend to tie things back to some of the work I'm doing now. That's the beauty of doing the podcast the way I get to do it now, is I talk with my clients all the time about their optimal self, and understanding that if you actually invest in your optimal self, then all this other stuff, all these titles, all these responsibilities, your ability in all of those other roles will immediately rise. Everything that you do outside of your optimal self now will continually give you a greater return, because you're stopping before you step forwards and thinking about, how can I serve my best self? And, I think that's clearly what I'm hearing with you. And then obviously the power of storytelling is so vital when it comes to letting one's guard down. Like how do you let somebody in through the power of story? And for me, I see it everywhere I go. It's probably why I only read biographies and I don't really get into things like fiction, is because for me, I love knowing a person. Even if I've never met a person, I get to learn about that person and take lessons from that person's life, because they're letting me in, and they're doing it through story. And I think that's where folks like you and I, and I'm sure all the people that are operating and benefiting from Wayfinders, they very much come from that same sort of mindset of like, how do I either reveal more about myself through story, or how do I let others, how do I find about more from other people through how they integrate story within their world too. So this is all phenomenal stuff. And the great thing I love about it too is that we get to have this conversation right now, and it speaks to so much of what we're talking about within the conversation. Both of us are very comfortable providing stories and going into detail on why it is we operate the way we do, and the benefits to operating this way, and our true mission at the core of why we do it certain ways too. And I really encourage people as well just to go back and listen to the first time Mike joined us, because it's funny you mentioned the Greenland trip, and last you were on, you told us about the trial trip, if you will, for that, and there was an incredible story that came with that. And so I just think I encourage people to go check that out. I'm not gonna make you say it again here, because people need to go back and check out the episode. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes. But before I let you go, man, like when you look at what you've accomplished here in the last few years and compare it maybe to some of these other entrepreneurial quests that you've been on previously to Wayfinders. Let's go to the competitor now within you. Let's go to that guy. Like, let's talk a little bit to him. Like, where is he? Where does the competitor within you maybe look at what you've achieved with Wayfinders and say, this is what I'm most proud of, or this is what we're accomplishing that I never maybe even anticipate us accomplishing? Like, you talk to me a little bit about that.
So I knew I wanted to just focus on a small group of people and have meaningful change, and take these people on a journey with me, so we can go on this journey together. So that's been the focus since day one, is creating value for my customers. And that's that's what motivates me. That's what keeps me going. That's what's made the company so successful. Like I said, I don't do any marketing, but my events are sold out for the next year and a half.
Right.
And every week, I'm getting 2 or 3 messages from my members, from my customers saying like, thank you for what you've done for me. You've had such an impact on my life. And, for a while there, I would kind of deflect those and, be like, oh, it's not me, it's the community, it's you or whatever. And so I'm trying to, work on taking that in and being grateful for it and gracious about it and appreciative about it. And, for the time being, like I'm in this interesting space. Like I said, I've got all this bandwidth, and I could envision, a 10x company, and I could lay out a roadmap for how I'm going to 10x this company over the next 5 years. And I know I've got the business acumen to pull it off, but maybe I will do that. Maybe I won't. But I'm that core commitment to providing value for people is going to stay at the forefront. And if I can reach more people and create the same level of value and same transformation and impact for people, that's great. But I'm not going to compromise that, because it's very easy to compromise that when you're scaling and growing a business. Mm-hmm. And I also don't want to compromise this beautiful thing I've created for myself, where I don't have to work too hard. I don't have to stress too much about work and all this kind of stuff. So that just makes me really proud to be able to create this community and create this beautiful container of experimentation and exploration, and create these journeys for people, and to be able to walk alongside them. Right, I'm on my own journey, and we're walking that journey together, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. And something I'm hearing here in your response is like, as competitors, sometimes the one of the key ingredients to being a successful competitor is finding the best way to define success. And I'm really hearing that from you. Like, just, there was a time 10 years ago where success was as measurable as success can be, based on numbers. And now it's about, how do you get that return of value being confirmed? Like, and that comes in a very different form. People would say it can't be measured, but here you are talking about that emotional feeling and connection that you have to these words that people are sharing with you. And one could argue that there's no greater return when it comes to the work that we do is that human acknowledgement of impact. And I hear that quite clearly in everything that you're doing. And it's so funny that normally at the end of an episode, I'll be like, go here to find out more about it. But you're too busy for people to get in touch with you, man. You can't, there's no point going to the website. He's booked all the way through 2024. I'm just kidding, obviously. But tell everybody, Mike, where they can learn more about you and where they can learn more about Wayfinders at this time.
Yeah, the website is way-finders.com, way-finders.com. My adventures are sold out to the end of next year. Mm. There is always a wait list. There's a pop-up, and you can enter your email address to get on the mailing list. I'm also going to be opening up our community cohort. So, if you don't have the means or the time or whatever to go on an adventure, you can still join the community. We're going to open up our next cohort in December of 2023. We also have an incredible business accelerator program launching next year that I'm super excited about. And I've taken a little bit of a pause from my writing, but I'm going to start writing again soon. So you can also, join me on my Substack as well. And so that's where you can find me.
Love it. I'm going to put all that information in the show notes. And it's so funny, since we last spoke, man, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she got really hooked on the movie Moana. And Moana is all about wayfinding. And It's so funny that when it first came up, I was like, I've heard that word before. Where have I heard that word before? And what I love about reading through your website is it really gives the background of the term wayfinder. And so if there's anybody listening to this episode that didn't hear the first one, and they're kind of scratching their head, where have I heard that term wayfinder before? Chances are you've got a kid at home and you've watched Moana a few times, just like me. So I wanted to drop that in, just a funny anecdote. But Mike, man, honestly, again, really enjoyed the time, brother. Really did. I just love what you're doing. I love the work, the way in which you're impacting people. We're very much cut from the same cloth in that regards, and just testament to you for all the work. And keep it up, man. It's seen, and it's appreciated, and it's felt. So thanks for coming on again.
Likewise, and yeah, thanks for having me back, and congrats on your journey as well.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Career Competitor. And before you leave, be sure to take advantage of your free one-time discovery call with me to see how I can be of service to you as a coach or potentially even your team. Depending on what it is you're looking for at this point within your career, I want to be able to serve you with 30 minutes of my time to see how I can be of use to you and help you on your path of continued growth towards your optimal self in order to find optimal performance. Be sure to reach out to me, steve@careercompetitor.com, or just head to the website careercompetitor.com. I look forward to connecting with you soon, and bye for now.